So today's episode 74. We're going to do two things. We're going to let ChatGPT get to know us a little bit.
Nice.
But we're also going to talk about the personality of salvation. Not like it has a personality, but it's personal. Salvation is personal. Today on the Deep Dives, episode 74.
ChatGPT has become my preferred search engine.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I go to ChatGPT before I go to Google. Mostly, well, I don't know, probably 50-50 now. Just out of habit, I still go to Google. But then I'll go, I wonder what ChatGPT, and I go to ChatGPT.
Do you pay for ChatGPT?
Not yet, but
Okay.
it's one of those things that both Donna and I have decided it wouldn't be a bad idea. We would sacrifice something else if we had to in order to get it, because both of us use it
Yeah.
so much.
I've started using it so much to the point where I now pay for it.
You do.
Yeah, because I use it more than the free would allow. But also, I have multiple projects running in ChatGPT.
Right.
So
You actually use it as an assistant, an ongoing assistant that you teach, mentor every day.
yeah, as a language model, it's really good at writing like the first draft of reports.
Gotcha.
I don't rely on it for important intellectual information.
Okay.
For instance, in engineering, I'll give it, a brief outline of like the details of an inspection I did, and I'll tell it, put this information into a report format.
You give it. You don't ask it for information. You give it information and ask it to organize it.
Right. I'll do that. That's one of the ways I use it in my engineering practice. And then once it does that, obviously I go through and I read every line and I edit it.
Right.
And,
That's
parse
your
through it.
reputation.
Right. Just to make sure, because it does get a lot of things wrong. It's calling it intelligence. I think a lot of people get the wrong impression of that. It does have a little bit of intelligence, but it's not the same as sentience.
Define that for me, if you will.
So
wait a minute. Let me ask ChatGPT what that means. Sentience.
Because you can even ask it, "Are you sentient?" It'll say no.
Okay.
Sentience is like you're self-aware.
Okay. Gotcha.
And where that, and this is going to really start getting into philosophical stuff quick, because like the challenge that people are trying to wrap their minds around right now is what constitutes consciousness.
Yes, right.
And that's around this whole idea of sentience. Well, a non-sentient thing like artificial intelligence, it can infer context, it can infer relationships between concepts and words, but it's really not doing analysis. It's more or less like, what is the probability that this word comes after this word? Okay.
It's good at it. It's good at
it's good at it, but it's not like when I say like what is 2 plus 2? It's not necessarily doing that calculation, but it looks at the first part of that 2, and it's not evaluating this as the number 2. It's a token. Like this is a piece of information, and from there it kind of goes into like an embedding space. It says this piece of information usually fits into one of these contexts.
Okay.
This is a number, and so we're probably dealing with something mathematical. We could be dealing with something that's not mathematical, but I'm going to sort of like orient myself towards mathematics. I'm going to look at the next token, which is a plus sign, and then I'm going to go back and revise what I think that first 2 is based on the next one. And so it's doing this with all these tokens, and at the end of it says, well, I've seen these 4 tokens, a 2, a plus sign, another 2, and an equal sign. And as I've inferred all the context from them and then analyzed what the context for the whole thing is, I'm pretty sure the next token that appears is this one, and it's a 4. And so it's not necessarily doing that. It's not necessarily doing the analysis. It's arriving at a probability that this is the next symbol in this sentence.
That's pretty deep. And you ask
Yeah.
yourself, does it matter? For the simple things, the way I use it is really like a word processor, a really good word processor. That's the way I use it.
Right. And for conversational things like reports or asking it questions or whatever, it does pretty good at it. But if I give it an engineering problem that says, analyze this and give me the results of your analysis and calculations, it's really, really bad at that. It gets it wrong a lot of times.
Gotcha.
And more, I'm seeing clients and potential clients and contractors and stuff that they're coming to me and they're like, hey, I asked ChatGPT this and this is what it told me. And they want to get my input on it.
Okay.
The coolest answer that I think ChatGPT gives, which really makes me feel good about myself, it says, you should probably consult an engineer. I love those.
That's great.
But there's sometimes it gives an answer, and sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong.
Right.
But here again, where it's really good is you can set aside a specific thread conversation in ChatGPT where you upload a document to it and you ask it questions based on that document, like a building code or a land development code or a set of specifications and standards. And it will answer questions fairly well based on that input source.
Okay.
Now you still have to go back and verify it because a lot of times it'll get subtle things wrong. Like it'll say, according to section da 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 da, this is the answer to your question. You go back to that section, has nothing to do.
Oh,
with
really?
Okay. So it is still something that definitely you have to hold its hand.
Right. Okay.
But it does definitely have its usefulness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you seen the trend on Facebook? It was last week where families ask ChatGPT to roast their family portrait. Oh, it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
I've done something similar.
I know. You told me this. This is so funny.
So, especially if you have multiple conversations going in ChatGPT, you can ask it a question that is determined by like your habits and stuff in those other conversations. And so I opened up a clean conversation, a brand new, and I said, "What is my biggest weakness?" And I didn't know that it was able to cross-reference all these other conversations.
It is. So that's my question, so I can. Okay.
And so it looked at how I interacted with it over all those different. And I have different threads set up for. I've one that's called philosopher, one that's called Bible scholar. I have several different ones that are like engineering and like code related, like building code related. I have one that's just random. I just have it do random tasks. It can be like I gave it a picture of me, my wife, and a friend of ours, and on a trip we all went on, and I said, change this picture, but make us puppets. And it did that. So that's the kind of random stuff I have, or like the questions I asked today come from my random one. But anyway, so it goes through all of those interactions, and it develops a personality profile of me and tells me what my biggest weakness is. And it says that I don't let things go. and it says like, let me see if I can find it, because it's pretty funny. And I would say, like, if I'm honest, totally spot on.
Well, I thought about that whenever you told, I think you told Chris and I what it analyzed you as. I think it said not forgiving and too persistent or something like that. And I started thinking, that's not at all his personality. That might be his job.
Right.
Which we want an engineer to not be forgiving and be persistent, right? I want the building that I'm in to be as persistent as possible. But personality-wise, and you're very forgiving, and you know what I mean. So anyway, I just want to throw that out.
Well,
there.
it says I don't let things go easily. It says you want precision. If something doesn't line up biblically, mathematically, structurally, legally, you don't just shrug it off. That's great for getting things right, but it might take it tough to move on from stuff that's mostly right if it isn't exactly right. says, I've also noticed you're not too patient with repeated mistakes, especially if you've already explained what you want. That's fair, but maybe it's a double-edged sword when working with people who aren't as fast or detail-oriented. So I'm probing it a little more. It says it's also a component of my biggest strength, though. And so it says, your strength is precision and high standards, but that can become a weakness when I'm dealing with ambiguity or imperfect systems, which is basically everything. Or if I'm working with people who don't think as rigorously, or if you're trying to relax or let something be good enough. It's not a bad flaw. It's the kind that makes good engineers and thinkers, but might keep you up at night if the numbers don't line up or someone shrugs off an error.
Okay.
But and it talked about my communication style. It says, I ask for precise answers, often double-check data, and correct or refine output when it's off, even slightly. It tells me that you're detail-oriented and value accuracy over fluff. I think this is hilarious because just the other day, I was having a conversation with my wife, and she was, my wife, she is total opposite of me. Not the total opposite, like opposites attract, but like the kind of opposites that you're supposed to be incompatible and hate each other.
Okay.
Like what I find joy in is her source of frustration,
Okay.
and vice versa. But this month we'll be celebrating 23 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
So I think the overlap is that we're stubborn. But and they've been good years, not nothing there. But
7 of the best years of your life.
Right. 7 of those have been. But so we were discussing something, and she was trying to explain. Something, and I'm trying to understand it, and so I'm asking her more and more questions. I'm like dissecting this idea, and I noticed really quickly she started getting like defensive, like I'm attacking her, or I don't believe her, or I'm trying to disprove her.
Okay.
And I had to stop and I asked her, I'm like, so like I'm trying to understand this better, which is why I'm asking all these questions. I'm not trying to disprove you or counter you or disagree with you. I'm trying to understand it. How do you dissect an idea if you need to understand it? Because I'm like, maybe if I can switch strategies, I can get the information I need without coming across as being combative or something like that. She said, I don't dissect them. I just think about it. And that made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Because
hence the opposites.
Right. And even the way we think, because she's asked me before, my daughter has too, like when I'm in my own head and I'm thinking, am I thinking in terms of words or like abstract ideas and pictures and stuff?
Yeah.
And I'd never really been asked that before, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, I don't have conversations. Like if I think like I have to do the laundry, I don't think of the phrase I have to do the laundry. Like in my mind, I just visualize the laundry basket or something. It's like a concept that I understand, unless I'm trying to like practice saying something. Then I have the conversation. But yeah, it was interesting. It's always interesting for me, the difference in the way my brain works and her brain works. But it's always difficult to get how her brain works, because in probing to see how it works, which is an exciting venture for me, comes off as me being combative or trying to like point out an error in the way she thinks or whatever. And I'm like, no.
Gotcha.
It's really funny.
I could see. Yeah, sure it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's funny.
Yeah.
I don't know if she does, but to me, it's interesting. Like even the conflict is interesting because why does the conflict exist?
Right.
Everything is dissected. And so, yeah, ChatGPT, like it even guessed my personality type, and it got spot on.
Gotcha. Well, I think it's interesting. For what I use it for, it's a good tool. It's a good tool. I would like to have some current information, and I think the one you don't have to pay for only goes up to a certain year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I know the one you do pay for, it can actively search online, or you can give it a source to think from.
Okay. We may go back and right now it's doing its job. I
I
love
would recommend asking it what your weakness is.
okay. I don't know if I'm that strong or not. What Donna had to go have a procedure the other day. I'll just say one that 50-year-olds, not that she's 50, but everybody over 50 is strongly suggested to have this procedure. And I was texting her the day before. I said, "What time do I need to pick you up, and how long is the procedure supposed to last?" She wrote me back the best response. It had little hash marks on it. If this happens, this happens. If this happens, this happens. But if I were you, I'd get there. Da, 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 da. And I wrote back, "Thank you, ChatGPT. I mean Donna," because it was straight from ChatGPT, man, and I knew it. But it was very informative,
Right.
I mean, show up 15 minutes, do this and do this and do this. It was very, very informative and obvious. But anyway, so do you want to ask me some questions?
We'll do some of these. So what I did is
I want to hold on to as many passes as I need.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. So what I told is ask me some funny questions that can be used to get to know me. They can be philosophical, religious, or random.
Okay.
So some of these were just absolutely dumb, so I'll skip those.
Okay.
For example, if
Those are the ones I
were,
might do well at, but that's okay.
If you were a thought experiment, would you be Schrodinger's cat or Plato's cave? I'm gonna skip that.
I'm glad.
Yeah. Would you rather have absolute free will or always make the right decisions but without knowing why?
Well, I'm just going to say free will because that's what we have. I'm not going to have a creative answer to that.
I would agree with the free will because I like the ability to choose even if I choose the wrong thing.
And if we say otherwise, it's kind of, well, it's just a stupid question. But if we say otherwise, it's inferring that there's not a creator in a way.
Right. Or if there is a creator, he's not interested in us.
That's right.
Which kind of gets into what we're going to be talking about today about salvation being something personal.
Right. Yes. Yes. Good.
Good. If we don't have free will, even though we're locked into always making the right decision, do we really have the capability to choose God or choose something else? Do we really have the capability to love?
It's a fair question. It's a question that's been asked since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
The dawn of time. I don't know if I've ever said that term before. The dawn of time.
Is it morally wrong to eat cereal with a fork just to avoid sogginess?
Heck no. Morally wrong? I mean, I haven't been in such a mood lately that, for this example, last night I wore my Jerry Garcia T-shirt.
Yeah.
And I called it my Suck It T-shirt. Because if you don't like me wearing this at church, suck it. I don't care. So that's an antagonist. I've been in that antagonistic mood lately. If I know you don't like people eating cereal with forks, man, I'm whipping out the biggest fork I can whip out. I am eating it and staring at you in the face.
Do you have a favorite fork at home?
My favorite fork is those big, heavy ones. Not necessarily big, but the ones that you cannot bend with your hands.
Yeah,
I just like this.
I do have a favorite fork and a favorite spoon. Yeah.
Can you eat a fork if the prongs aren't exactly?
I can't eat a fork.
Can you eat? Thank you. Can you eat with a fork? Can you eat with a fork if the prongs aren't exactly? If one is off a little bit?
I have encountered that at restaurants before.
Yeah.
I can, but it is difficult.
I notice it.
It grates on me.
Yeah.
And before the meal is over, I've pretty much, you can pretty much rely on the fact that I will straighten those tines.
Gotcha. You're going to straighten them. Okay. All right. I got you. At home, will you straighten or will you throw them out, or at home, you obviously straighten them out at home?
Oh yeah. Yeah. All of our fork tines are parallel at home.
What I'll get out the measure thing. They're all perfect. What I don't enjoy this, but if I get a fork, I put it in my mouth and I use it. And oh yeah, that one was in the garbage disposal.
Yep.
There's been more than one or two, but it goes in the disposal.
I eat in a grid pattern, and so
you go what house so
like Kind of like a typewriter.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Left to right, left to right, left.
Yeah, like perfect example. If you've ever been to Olive Garden, like our favorite dessert is the tiramisu, and it comes out in a square. And my wife eats that with a spoon, and I can't handle that. I have to eat it with a fork, and the tines have to be straight because I draw a parallel line with one edge, and that's the part I eat. And then I move one line in, one line in, and so
You
in
are
that
an
case,
interesting character, Josh.
yeah, we're getting to really know my weird
Telling
stuff.
you, man.
But if the tines aren't straight, then I can't mark a straight line. So I have to straighten the tines before I dig in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just did that the other day, in
How
fact.
about that? How about that? We learned a lot about Joshy today. All right.
Yep.
What else?
Let's see. Now, if it's a salad where there's like really small pieces in the salad, I'll eat that with a big spoon instead of a fork.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. A
'Cause
big
it's-
spoon.
Yeah, because it's easier to shovel it in
Okay.
than
Sure.
stab all the individual pieces.
Never thought
Sorry.
about that.
Let's see.
And I never will again. I'm so glad I'm learning all this stuff. I'm going to use it somewhere.
If angels play harps in heaven, what instruments do you think they play in rush hour traffic?
Lead guitar or rhythm guitar.
Okay. Let's see. I don't know. If King Solomon hosted a podcast, what would it be called?
Oh, gosh. Oh, you answer that one.
I don't know.
King Solomon's Magic
The
Hour.
Wisdom of Solomon. I don't know. I think that's he would probably come up with something a lot more original.
Yeah, probably so.
I want to know if so sometimes we talk about our wives positively.
In
I
a
think
very positive manner.
he had over 600. I wonder how that would go.
Man, oh, man.
Maybe
I
his
don't-
podcast would just be the Wives of Solomon.
The Wives of Solomon.
It's just a
Help!
different guest each time. I don't know.
My goodness gracious.
What snack would you offer to aliens to convince them we're worth saving?
I'm just going to say the double stuffed Oreo cookie. I don't know that there's anything better to me because it's got chocolate and that white stuff in the middle. The double stuff, come on.
I don't
give
like
it to
Oreos
me.
at all.
Woo!
Zero
Man.
bar? What's a zero bar?
Oh, it's a white coating. It's probably white chocolate. And, well, like every candy bar, it's got nougat on the inside. But this nougat is unique.
Okay.
This nougat is more kind of like a thicker Three Musketeers bar without the stuff that strings. Mm-hmm. Is that close, Chris? Okay. And it's got and it's got some nuts in it. It's a very unique taste, I'll have to say. It's it's Chris's favorite. I have to say that's a good choice.
What I'm just now realizing, and it's really depressing me. Yesterday, my wife made a bunch of. So she's a pastry chef, as you know, and she where she works part time at a local coffee shop, baking different pastries and stuff. She made these hand pies, and it was strawberry basil, and she brought one home, and I forgot to bring it with me this morning, and that's really making me sad. So I'm gonna have to see if I can go by there between appointments.
That's worth a trip home, man.
And get that thing. But anyway, so what?
Hand pie. Boy, that just paints a picture to me.
Right? Yeah, it's just instead of putting it in a pie pan or like a little miniature pie thing, it's just a folded over crust with filling on it.
Just hold it.
Absolutely delicious. Yeah,
I'm sure it is.
What snack would I offer to aliens to convince them we're worth
Yes.
saving? Probably oatmeal cream pie.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There's some in the cupboard in there. There were anyway.
There were.
There were.
I ate them all, and probably because one, they taste good, but if you're trying to communicate, like, I don't know, because like the oatmeal, there's a health aspect to it, but the filling, it's also like combining it with sweet, so it's like we're balanced.
Okay.
Like we have components that are good, we have components that might not be as good, but we really work well together as
Put 'em
humanity.
together. Sure. That's
Maybe
good.
I don't know. Maybe I'm putting too much weight into the philosophical implications of oatmeal cream pie, but that's my answer.
Okay. Sounds good.
If you were granted one superpower, what would you pick?
The the ability to see perfect white balance.
Wow, that's really specific.
It is. You know why?
Seems like a waste of an answer, though. If I'm going to be honest.
I am struggling with seeing the correct white balance in every photo that I take, and if you know correct white balance, you are a couple of steps ahead of everybody else. Now, there's auto white balance and all that stuff, and that's fine. But for me to be able to go like this, correct white balance, click, I'm ahead of the game.
Okay.
And I'm just struggling with that right now. I've said when I see a picture that has correct white balance, I know it, and I go, man, that's a beautiful picture, and it's probably just my eye, and most people won't even see a difference. But it's just, I define white balance just the way I think about it is how colors look.
Me on a balance beam.
Colors according to how they relate to each other to reality.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's me.
100%. I would want to stop time.
Stop time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stop and start time. Like assuming all of the other like ripple effects of that are suspended, like infinite momentum and all that kind of stuff and relativity.
Yeah.
If I could start and stop time, I think that would be the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, would your time stop also, or would time stop and allow you to get caught up with everything that you're behind on, and then?
Yeah, and not necessarily just for the purpose of catching up on things I'm behind on, but I think there's a lot of convenient things you could do when you stop time.
Okay.
Like instead of having to leave 30 minutes before my appointment, I can leave 10 seconds before my appointment.
Okay.
And
so your time continues or even speeds up or slows down. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, that's a good answer.
Yeah, I think there used to be this. There used to be this show. I think in the 1980s. The name of it slips my mind all of a sudden, but it was this teenage girl. She had a human parent and an alien father. And her like half alien power, or whatever, is she could put her fingers together and she'd stop time.
Okay.
And then she could do stuff, and then she could go and like, touch people and unfreeze them so that they would join her in this,
interesting.
this
Okay.
thing. And then when she wanted to start time again, she'd put her hands together.
Okay.
And that was always like, even as a kid, I'm like, that's
my deal.
cool. That would be so helpful.
Okay.
So like even more so than like flying or reading people's minds or X-ray vision or anything. I want to stop and start time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. All right. What's next?
All right. We'll do one or two more.
Okay.
Let's see. One second. All right. These I haven't read to you yet.
Okay.
I just said, give me a couple more. Okay. If the universe is infinite, does that mean there's a version of you who actually enjoys the thing that you hate the most?
No.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. Let's see. Some of these are just dumb. Like, if time is an illusion, can we all agree to stop setting alarms? Let me ask you this.
Okay. Axe away.
One thing that boggles my wife's mind about me is like in the morning when my alarm goes off, I'll go from dead asleep to awake, getting up, walking around, doing everything, and it takes her like, a good, 3.5 days to get up and going.
Right.
What are you like?
It's a good question, and I'll tell you why. I used to be get up and get going in a drop of a hat. Alarm, boom, on bike, ride 20, 30 miles, come home, Donna gets up, life is good.
Now, did you say 20 or 30 miles?
Yes.
Holy cow. How early would you get up?
Whenever my goal was to be on the bike whenever the sun's coming. When the sun is just up enough where I'd maybe have a blinking light, but that's just so people can see me, not necessarily so I can see.
And this is a bike you pedal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I can see that on a motorcycle.
No, this was the height of my cycling
Okay.
life, and I mean,
How long would that take you?
hour 15, something like that.
Hour and 15 to go 30 miles?
So all that changed. What I would normally do, miles. Let's put miles away. I would
Okay.
ride for an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half,
Oh, okay.
4 days a week, and ride about 75 miles on Sunday. No, 75 to 100 miles on Saturday, and 30 miles on Sunday before
Okay.
church. So whatever that is whatever it is. So, and I would average 17 to 18, 19 miles an hour on the short days. The long days, strangely enough, I'd average faster than that because I'm riding with people.
Okay.
So we'll go 100 miles an average, 20 miles an hour, or something like that. Yeah,
Man.
it wasn't easy,
Yeah. I wouldn't guess.
but it was.
I've never once in my life thought, you know what? I'm going to bike 30 miles in the morning.
Yeah, it was an obsession. It was
Yeah.
an obsession, and it wasn't just riding either. It was riding with a purpose. So I had a coach that would send me how I would ride. So 20 minutes, I do intervals. So 20 minutes doing this, or 10 minutes doing this, or 30 seconds all out, recover for 2 minutes. 30 seconds all out, recover 2 minutes. Do 4, 5, or 6 or 7 sets of those. And then recover and go. So it was very intentional. It would simulate a race.
Okay.
And
So alarm goes off, you pop right up?
yeah, absolutely. There's
Okay.
times where I slept in what I was going to ride
Yeah.
in, because it's not very much more than underwear.
Yeah.
It's a tight, it's a tight stuff. But
Right.
yeah, that would have, yes. But now it takes me. I'm wrong. Bobby, my cat's coming in the bedroom. Meow.
Yeah.
I heard the alarm go off. All right, I'm up. Strangely enough, a lot of things changed with me after open heart surgery. Before, even post obsession of cycling, I was still doing that, getting up and running, actually.
Right.
But then post surgery, it's like my whole body changed.
Yeah.
My whole inside. It was just really strange. And since then, I struggle to get up.
Yeah.
My alarm goes off at 6 o'clock, and I'm up by 6:30. If I don't have anything to do, I'll sleep till 7. How about you? You're up. You turned into a morning person.
Yeah, I've turned into a morning person. Now, I still hit snooze quite a bit, but there reaches a point where it's like, okay, my brain realizes that it's time to not hit snooze anymore.
Okay.
And I'll just go from like dead asleep to alarm goes off, open my eyes, sit up, go, walk
Okay.
in the other room, brush your teeth, get dressed, start going. And my wife's just kind of like sitting there like, what just happened?
Mm-hmm.
Like you were dead asleep and snoring 10 seconds ago.
Right. You said the other day that getting up and being a morning person now has enabled you to be more productive. It's really the only way that you're able to
Yes.
do what you do.
I've had way more energy getting
Yeah.
up, like going to bed early and getting up super early
Mm-hmm.
than going to bed late and sleeping in late or trying to still get up early or whatever.
I'll agree with that. Knowing what that's like, I totally agree. I used to love being up in the morning and nobody's up, and it's just,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I love coming into the office before dawn because there's no traffic out.
Yes.
It's quiet. I can the phones aren't ringing, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's good stuff. I'm glad you do that.
All right. So
And I'm glad I don't do that now.
Well, what's funny is like even on Saturdays when I don't have to work, I still enjoy getting up early.
Good.
For the same reason.
There's a clarity about it.
Yeah, there's a clarity about it, and it's like a peaceful time where you can just do something.
Yeah,
whether
right.
it's read or do something with your hobby or whatever.
A lot of people have that as their quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real good quiet time. Your mind hasn't had enough stimulus yet to be busy.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's kind of the way I thought about it.
Yep. All right. So if you could ask God one question and get a clear answer, what would you ask?
What he wants me to do that day. What do you want me to do this month? What do you want me to concentrate on? It's a great on-time question for the kid, man, because it's transitioning my ministry right now, as a matter of fact. I just talked to Craig yesterday about somebody taking over Pure Friendship and me just downsizing that or offloading that. Exactly that. What do you want me to do today in order for me to meet the goals that you have for me in the future?
I don't know what I would ask. I hate that it's only limited to one question, because there's so many things I'm curious about, just history in general, that I'd like to ask about. Because
Sorry.
No, I was like, one of the things that I've kind of been obsessed with lately, you know how I'm like really into history and archaeology, especially biblical archaeology and stuff, is pre-flood. You know, the whole earth was pretty much scraped clean. So there's not like records of civilizations and stuff to the extent that we have post-flood. I'm sure something like that still exists somewhere. That's one of the things that I would love to know the answer to. Like, where could I go to see something pre-flood?
Man.
But here again, that's one question in one interest.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of why questions as well.
Okay.
That I think we all have.
Yeah.
But man, that would be difficult to narrow it down to one question. I have to think for a while.
Why do bad things happen to good people? That kind of thing. That's for a
Or why do
sold
bad
out.
things happen to me?
Right. That's really what we're getting down to.
Right.
That's what it comes down to.
Well, because there's the other thing, like, you know, what are we truly seeking? Are we really seeking truth or comfort or control? And I think that question sort of gives insight into what we might be thinking. Because, like, for instance, you want to ask, what am I supposed to do today? How am I supposed to do? Like, there's a comfort and control aspect to that question, because there's a lot of discomfort in the unknown.
Right.
And part of that discomfort comes from the knowledge that we're not in control of a lot of things. I'm the same way. So yeah, it's.
Well, there was a time, and I don't regret. I just had a wonderful conversation with Craig Heinzman last night. About half-hour impromptu conversation about what we're talking about here. There was a time when I knew I was right in the palm of God's hands. It was so comforting to know that I was doing what He wanted me to do, and exactly what it was. So I knew that, and I was so comforted in that, and it's so liberating to know that there's really nothing that can happen to me that's going to make me veer off from what I'm doing or make me unhappy, because who else am I working for? Am I living for? Right.
So would you say faith is more about certainty or trust?
Trust that it is God that I'm hearing. Because I got other voices in my head too. Try not to pay attention to. Trust that it is God. And how do I know that? Well, because I'm actively asking Him. I'm studying, and I'm having quiet time, and I'm doing the things that the Bible tells us to do, and that I believe are the right things to do, the good influences, and hearing what God's voice is like allows you to hear what His voice isn't like. If I'm hearing this and it's not consistent with God's character, well, chances are really, really good it's not Him. Is it consistent with His character? We don't have to know that that looking at porn on our phones isn't Christ-like. Well, the Bible doesn't ever say you shouldn't look. Well, no kidding. But is it consistent with His character? Do you think He, has He ever said anything like that's good for you.
Right.
No. So it's not consistent.
Yeah. So in Hebrews 11, right, where it talks about faith, it's kind of like there's two aspects of it, because when it talks about Abraham, Abraham's faith, God called Abraham out of this pagan nation, this pagan city, Ur of the Chaldees, and so he was a pagan idol worshiper. At one time, God called him out of that and said, "Move," and he did. There was an aspect of that faith that had nothing to do with certainty, because God didn't tell him where to go. He just said, "Go, and I'll let you know while we're there." So it's almost like that faith was trust, but it wasn't certainty. But then as you move on in that chapter, and they start talking about other heroes of the people we'd call heroes of the faith, you see them basing their faith on the certainty of a covenant God gave them, or something like that. So that's kind of an interesting question. Like,
it is a very interesting question.
What part of our faith would we label as, like you said, I know what I'm supposed to do right now. There's a certainty about that versus I know the person leading me is going to do what's right for me. I have no certainty in I have no knowledge of what's going to happen, but I trust the person who's leading it. I think those are two sides of the faith coin that we don't often evaluate.
I liked what you just said there, because during the time when I was creating Pure Friendship, all that was in play. There were times whenever in Pure Friendship, for our listeners or watchers, it's a ministry for people with quote disabilities with special needs, that's faith based, and it's run in Marcus Point Baptist Church. There was a time where he would guide me, lead me to do certain things, very task-oriented things, in order to create, or in order to assure an outcome, or at least increase the likelihood of an outcome. I don't know why we're doing this, but every now and then he would open up the curtains and show me the future, and then he'd close that curtain again, and I would forget about the things that were long term that he had for me. But I guess he would show. It's like a memory that I forgot, and every now and then I remember it. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I was doing this because of a relationship that we're going to have with another company. I was building this up in this room for relationship for another company. Whenever they come here, we can do this. Tangible things like that, and more intellectual and emotional things as well. There were so many things that happened like that assured me that we were on the right task. And I'll say this to our viewers, it wasn't just me. I was sharing this with other people that I trusted, my wife being one of them, and several people along the years that I trusted, I knew were spiritually led and obedient, to keep me on track also, because I really think that God speaks to us through our family and friends as well. So staying in tune with that, and having people keep you in tune with what you've told them God is talking to you about, is part of that staying on task.
Okay. Here's what's cool about that. It always amazes me how our relationship with God is so personal. Building off that idea about faith being about certainty or trust. The other Sunday, one of the verses that was pulled out of the sermon was Romans 10, where it says that there's no difference between the Jew and the Greek, how salvation is offered to all of them. And over in Luke 4, that idea is sort of expounded on in a really interesting way, because God was so Jesus was in the synagogues talking to other Jews, and he was reading a scripture from Isaiah, and saying like, today this is fulfilled in your, fulfilled in your eyes. Basically acknowledging once again, like Jesus is God in the flesh, and this prophecy that was in Isaiah is an indication that this guy in front of you, speaking to you in the synagogue, this is God who has come in the flesh, and this is the person that was being referred to by this great prophet hundreds of years ago, the prophet to the kingdom of Judah, Isaiah, and really made the religious elite of the day angry, not just because of that, but because what he said after it. And he said something really really controversial at the time. He said, surely. Well, let me say what they did first. He said unto them, "You will surely say unto me this proverb, Physician, heal thyself. Whatsoever we have heard done in Capernaum, do also here in thy country." So in other words, Jesus, we've heard the stories of what you've done in these other cities. Why aren't you doing that here in your own country? And the issue over and over again with Israel is that Jesus came to his own people, but his own people rejected him, just like his own people rejected all of the prophets in the Old Testament. Like whenever there was a message from God, it seemed like Israel rejected it over and over and over again. They would reject it. There would be the consequences of that rejection, and then they'd realize their sin. They'd come back and they'd repeat the cycle all over again, right?
Right.
And so Jesus said something really controversial. He said, "Verily, I say unto you, no prophet is accepted in his own country. But I tell you a truth, many widows were in Israel in the days of Elijah, when the heaven was shut up 3 years and 6 months, when great famine was throughout all the land. But unto none of them was Elijah sent, save unto Sarepta, a city of Sidon, unto a woman that was a widow." And so this goes back to an account in 1 Kings when this was during the time of King Ahab, Queen Jezebel. They were enemies of God. Jezebel, I think her father was a priest of Baal worship, and she brought that into the nation of Israel and all that stuff too, and or I guess Judah, I guess it would be, but there was this like religious war between Jezebel and the priests of Baal and Elijah and the prophets of God, and Elijah was kind of like the front runner for all this stuff, and God had stopped the rain in Israel for 3.5 years because of their insistence on worshiping these idols. And meanwhile, Elijah was being sustained supernaturally. He was like living in a cave, and there was a brook that had some water in it that he could get, and like birds were bringing him food and all this stuff. But there came a time when that ended, and he was instructed to leave. So that aspect of faith, that's just trust, right? There wasn't certainty. He didn't know where his next meal was going to come from. God just told him, pick up and go. And so he headed back towards his people. On the way, he encountered this widow. They had a son, and they had no food. All they had left was a little bit of oil and a little bit of flour. And so he instructed them like, "Hey, I'm hungry. Can you make me something to eat?" And they did it. And even though this was their last one, because they were just going to be like, "Well, this is our last meal. We're going to die." And so Elijah said, "Hey, can you share with me?" And they did anyway, and they were blessed as a result of it with more than they could even consume. And not only that, but when illness fell on the child, Elijah brought him back. And so this wasn't a widow that was a Jew. This was a Gentile woman. Mm-hmm. So on his way to Israel, he stopped at this Gentile's house and took care of their needs before Israel. Mm-hmm. And that's what Jesus was referring to. He's like, there were a lot of widows in Israel during this time, but Elijah, he stopped at a Gentile woman before Israel. And then he goes on to another one. He's like, and this is all in Luke 4. He said, there were many lepers in Israel in the time of Elisha, the prophet. So, Elijah and then his successor, Elisha. So there were many lepers in Israel in the time of Elisha, the prophet, and none of them was cleansed, saving Naaman the Syrian. So in other words, here again, instead of going to Israel and healing lepers, there's this Gentile and this is in 2 Kings, this Gentile that was encountered by Elisha, and his leprosy was cleansed. A Gentile, prior to taking care of or addressing anything that Israel was dealing with. And this really made, Jesus saying this really made people mad. It says, all they in the synagogue, when they heard these things, were filled with wrath and rose up and thrust him out of the city and led him to the brow of a hill whereon their city was built, that they might cast him down headlong. So they were about ready to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
They were that mad.
Cliff.
Yeah, because in their mind, he had almost to the point where he was blaspheming, right? Because what he was essentially saying was, coupled with this idea that there's no difference between the Jew and the Greek, or Jew and the Gentile, salvation is for everyone. He went back to the Old Testament and gave an example of this, where a Gentile was prioritized over a Jew.
Right.
And I mean, there are plenty of examples where a Jew was prioritized over a Gentile, but these were examples to the opposite. Basically saying, like, there really is no priority. God doesn't make a distinction between the Jew and the Gentile, other than an ancestral distinction, right? This comes from the people that are associated with the covenant, and this person comes from a group of people that are not associated with that covenant. But there was always a mechanism for a Gentile to come in and be partakers of that covenant, join with Israel. That happened with Rahab, happened with Ruth, happened with Uriah the Hittite, who was one of David's mighty men. It was the being part of this covenant, being a son of Abraham, was open to everybody, because God wasn't really concerned with, you're the wrong race, or you're the wrong people group, or whatever. He was concerned with, do you want to have a relationship with me? And I think that's really interesting, because it goes back to how personal salvation is.
Yeah.
He doesn't really care about your qualifications, your background, anything like that. God wants a personal relationship with you, and he doesn't make a distinction between your background or your history or your lineage or your qualifications or talents or whatever. It's just, do you trust me?
Yeah.
Do you seek something that is worthy of your trust and something that will bring certainty into your life? And I think that's what is the broader scope of Hebrews 11, talking about faith, because what did they ultimately put their trust and their certainty in, but the promise of a coming Messiah, the focus of entire Scripture. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing, the way Jesus brought that up. Really made a lot of people mad, because it was something from their own history that they couldn't disagree with. It's like, oh yeah, I guess Gentiles have been part of the picture the whole time. There's really nothing special about us.
Right, and that did not sit well.
Yeah, all have sinned, even the Jew, even the Greek.
Right, that didn't sit well at all. And every time that I hear the whenever people mess up, right, they get the cycle that you were talking about. They're healed. There's they're walking around the desert. They're healed. There's a locust, and then all this other stuff. They go back, and they go back around again. It's easy to say, couldn't they see the truth? But really, what I would challenge our viewers and listeners to see is see yourself in that.
Right.
See how we keep messing up. We have the gift of the Bible. We have the gift of the Old and the New Testament.
Right.
And we know what salvation is about, but we still go back to the sin.
Right.
We know what the answer is, but we still go back to what we know is not the right thing to do. So early in my journey to be closer to Christ, I didn't think that way. And thinking that way It's kind of liberating in a way to know that's exactly what I do.
Right.
do that every day. It's not locusts and things, but it's I suffer from sin every day.
So one last question.
Okay, hit me.
When do you feel most like yourself?
You had to end with one that's going to make me think.
I'll answer it while you're thinking.
Okay, answer it.
I think when I feel most like myself, it's in those early mornings when it's just quiet and it's just me and my thoughts.
Okay.
That's when I think I feel most like myself.
Okay.
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Okay. Thinking less philosophically than I took the question, there's just the honest truth. My first response was when I'm on my mountain bike. That is my first response. So that's what I'm gonna stick with. It's an interesting spiritual. It's an interesting physical, mental, emotional place to be, because I've done it so much that it feels like an extension of my body, where it's almost like I can close my eyes. Stick with me for a second. If I could close my eyes and still see, I could ride my bike and not even hesitate. You know what I mean? Just because I know how to navigate this corner. I know how to navigate this drop. I know how to navigate this climb without even thinking about it. And because of that, all this other stuff, there's times where I go out and ride, all the other stuff goes away. And there's times where I go out and I nail down, I get deeper into what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
And I think both have its place, but I prefer going out and losing myself and not thinking. And now that I hear myself say that, in sports, there's a thing called being in the zone, right? Michael Jordan said that there's times he goes out there, he feels like the hoop is a big bucket. He can't miss. It doesn't matter where he shoots. He just feels like he just can't miss, right? And there's some shooters. Whenever we were a sports shooter, the IDPA, I read a couple of books where whenever you get into the zone there, it's like what I just described. You everything that you do when you're engaging, when you're pulling your pistol, you're engaging, you're changing the magazine, you're racking the slide, everything happens without you having to engage any thought. It's just like you're going through the motions. And whenever the bell at the end or the buzzer at the end goes off and your time is counted, you can go back and think about what you did, but there's times, as this person described his runs through these national championships and international championships, there's times where he had to fix a jam that he doesn't even remember. Which means, you had to do at least 3 or 4 different things in order to put the magazine back in the pistol and re-engage, and he doesn't even remember doing that until he reflects on it, right? Because it was just so natural.
Right.
He's done it thousands and thousands of times, and that's whenever he would have his best score.
Okay.
And I thought, man, that's really the way I feel on a mountain bike.
Yeah.
Just doing it. There's times where I still mess. I mean, I don't
Right.
ride that much anymore.
Well, I think that's the same for me because, when, like, say I come here really early in the morning, to the office or whatever, or even at home, like when it's quiet and I'm the only one, either I'm the only one here, I'm the only one awake, that's when I'm like making my coffee, sitting down at the computer. I get to work on whatever I want, and sometimes it's, some hobby project or, maybe it's work related, maybe it's not, but it's like, it's my choice.
It's your zone. You're in the zone, man.
I can, watch something while I'm doing that, or listen to different music or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's usually when this is me in this environment and not someone forcing me to do something while I'm in this environment.
Boy, that is so much a place that you'd like to live.
Yeah, because usually as soon as 8:00 hits, phone starts calling, and you're doing tasks because other people need them, and it's not necessarily what you want to do. So it's like it's still me, but it doesn't feel like as much me because I'm sort of at the mercy of a client or something like that. But yeah, I think those morning times and, sometimes, evenings or whatever, but mostly it's just like that quiet, those quiet moments where nobody else is around. That's when I feel most like myself.
Interesting that you say that. I kind of started thinking about how you can, like when I get on the bike, I don't have any choice but to get into that zone. You know what I mean? I do have a choice, but it's easier because I'm physically changing from driving a car to being in that place.
Yeah.
And the more I think about that book, I need to bring that book in. He talks about how to get in that zone from waiting around for however long to engaging in that 7 seconds that you're shooting for competition. How do you get into that zone so quickly? That has to be so hard, right, to do that. Whereas me, I'll transition to it. I'm riding for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I can transition into that, go in that zone, come out of that zone. A superpower might be able, I might change my answer and say, I'd like to be able to get into that zone at will.
Okay.
And come out of it at will.
Yeah.
Like 30 minutes in the middle of the day to go into that zone and come out might be extremely rejuvenating.
Right.
Just a thought.
If you could stop time, you could take a nap.
Nah, I guess
that
you could.
Rejuvenating.
That'd be just as good, man. That'd be a fun podcast, Josh.
Yeah.
That was good. Very good. I appreciate it. Very much so. So you got to go get out of the zone and go start doing some engineering stuff.
I got to get out of this zone and go into another zone.
All right. Yeah. Love it.
I got, I think, 4 more appointments today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Site
right.
visits and phone calls and all that kind of stuff.
That's why they give you the big dough. Let's close with this. Last night we had Planner. I'll just call it Planner for Gun Club. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. 5 people in there, including you and I. I think that's right. So we're looking at going to the range a little bit more than we did. If we go one time, that will be more than we did this last quarter.
1 is greater than 0.
Right. Man, we used to go every weekend. You weren't able to join us every weekend because you have prior opportunities. But there'd be an opportunity to go every other weekend, something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to getting back into that and seeing what we can do. Maybe we'll bring some of that to the podcast. Chris and I were talking about having lavalier mics at the range, perhaps, and recording some first-time shooters or whatever. I think that'd be fun.
Deep dive on the road.
Right on. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. We'll talk to y'all later.
Next episode will be 75.
Nice. Okay. Good. We'll bring some tiramisu or something.
Yeah.
So watch you eat it in a grid
In a grid pattern.
That'd be good. See y'all later.